Yahuwah, upon your way to Jerusalem, stand and face Jerusalem. Blessing of the Sabbath. Barakata Yahweh, Basham, Yahweh Shai, Asherah, Nathan the Noah, Ashabeth, Bashalawam, the water, Amen. Blessed are you, Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai, that gives to us the Sabbath and peace. Thank you, so be it. Gabar, read everything. The Al-Ma'ah Asherah Machad, Psalms 121.
I will not.
Anya Harayim Baimya Oh Harim Bayan Yabawa Isaiah Yabawa Mayahawa Shasha Shamayim Warataza Wakab Salat La Yanathan Lamawat Regalia Yala Yanawam Shashwa Marka Hane La Yanawam Wala Yeshan Shashwamar Yashralib Yahweh Shamaria Yahweh Tazalia Ayu Yad Yim Yad Yawamam Hashamash La Hakaya Wayarak La Balayala Yahweh Yashamaria Makab Rai Yashamar Napashya Yahweh Yashamar Habalakya Wabawaaya My Tha will aid I will Basham Yahweh Shai the water Aman.
This is the Psalms 121. I will lift up my eyes unto the hills, from whence cometh my help. My help cometh from the Lord, which made heaven and earth. He will not suffer thy foot to be moved. He that keepeth thee will not slumber. Behold, he that keepeth Israel shall neither slumber nor sleep. The Lord is thy keeper. The Lord is thy shade upon thy right hand. The sun shall not smite thee by day, nor the moon by night. The Lord shall preserve thee from all evil. He shall preserve thy soul. The Lord shall preserve thy going out and thy coming in from this time forth and even forevermore. Amen.
Amen. Shema Yasharallah, Hero Israel, Deuteronomy 6 and 4. Shema Yasharallah, Yahweh, Eloheinu, Yahweh, Akad. Shema Yasharallah, Yahweh, Eloheinu, Yahweh, Akad. Shema Yasharallah, Yahweh, Eloheinu, Yahweh, Echad.
Deuteronomy the book of Deuteronomy 6 and 4. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord, and thou.
That's it.
Amen.
Amen. Thapalai, how the Lord's Prayer, Matthew 6 and 9. Abiyanawa, Shabbat Shemayim, Kodash, Hayya, Shamke, Yahweh, Malakwaf Kad, Thaba'a, Rotazawanka, Hayya Aisha Baratiza Kabashamayim Nathan the Nawa Lacham Yawam Zad Wasalak Nawa Kabawap Nawa Kasalak Nawa Kabawap Yanawa Wala Abiyar Nawa Oh Nasayawan Abo Hawashinawa Murakaya Laka Hamalakwa Wa ala wa thapara wa iwalam aman.
This is the book of Matthew 6 and 9, the Lord's Prayer. After this manner, therefore, pray ye, Our Father which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done in earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever.
Amen. Ha'ashara Matazawaf, the Ten Commandments, Exodus 20 and 3. La'ad, Yahayat, Lakab, Alahayim, Akarim, Alpanyat, La'ad, Thaishat, Lakab, Pasob, Wala'ad, Thaibadam, La'ad, Talakwakaf, Shamwab, Yahawab, Alahayakab, Lashawab, Zakar, Ath, Hayawam, Hashabaf, La Kodashwad, Kabad, Abiyaka, Wa Amaka, La'at, Taratazak, La'at, Tana'at, La'at, Taganab, La'at, Tainad, Shakur, La'at, Takhamad, Ko, Asharat, Lara'aika, Aman.
This is Exodus 20 and 3, the Ten Commandments. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven images or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. Thou shalt not bow down thyself to them, nor serve them. For I, the Lord thy God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children unto the third and fourth generation of them that hate me, and showing mercy unto thousands of them that love me and keep my commandments. Thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain, for the Lord will not hold him guiltless that taketh his name in vain. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work. But the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. In it thou shalt not do any work, thou, nor thy son, nor thy daughter, thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor thy cattle, nor thy stranger that is within thy gates. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that in them is, and rested the seventh day. Wherefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. Honor thy father and thy mother, that thy days may be long upon the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee. Thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not commit adultery, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's house, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife, nor his manservant, nor his maidservant, nor his ox, nor his ass, nor anything that is thy neighbor's. Amen.
Amen. Yeshabah, be seated. Barakata Yahweh by Shimi Hawashai, Asheronathan and Alpari Agapan Tuada Aman. La Yahweh by Shimi Hawashai, Yasher Allah. English translation. Blessed are you, Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai, that gives to us the fruit of the vine. Thank you, so be it. To Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai, with Israel. I Magwa, Panuay Jerusalem, stand and face Jerusalem. Barakata Yahweh, Agado, Rakawam, Abiyah, Wanawa'e, Aliyawan, Malak, Shao, Shamayim, Waraktaza, Wakao, Dabarian, Kayayam, Wagam, Hamashiach, Mayahawe, Arawanawe, Ahabnawe, Apala, Yawa Aitaza, Yahawasha, Zakarnawe, Yahweh, Bartazawan, Ainka, Yasha'ala, Zarnawe, Bana, Wasap, Yasha'ala, O Nanawe, Yam Yam, Aifa, Kayawam, Makwadam, Babakusha, Shalak, Mike Allah, Watazawadak, Alahayam, La, Magdanawa, Rapharnawa, Washamar, Alnawa, Bakur, Shalak, Haruka, Shao, Yawashai, Lanawa, Lalamanawa, Rabiam, Kakamab, Tabawana, Wada I, Shao, the Barka, Basham, Yahawashai, the Wada, Thum Yed, Why Walam, Aman. English translation. Blessed are you, Yahweh, the great, merciful, mighty, terrible, most high power, King of heaven and earth and all things living, and also the anointed from Yahweh, our Lord, our friend, the wonderful counselor, Yahweh Shai. Remember, Yahweh, favorably your people Israel. Help us build and gather Israel, most high, we beg you, right now, like the days of old. Please send Michael and the righteous powers to protect us, heal us, and watch over us. Mainly send the spirit of Yahweh Shai to us to teach us much wisdom, knowledge, and understanding of thy word. In the name of Yahweh Shai, thank you always and forever, so be it. Repeat the Hebrew only. Blessed are you, Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai that gives to us the law. Barakata Yahweh, Ba'ashim Yahweh Shai, Asherat, Nathan Lanawa, HaTawarat. Blessed are you, Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai that gives to us light to see. Barakata Yahweh, Ba'ashim Yahweh Shai, Asherat, Nathan Lanawa, Awar, Lara Awat. Blessed are you, Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai that gives to us the ramps horn to call the people. Barakata Yahweh, Ba'ashim Yahweh Shai, Asherat, Nathan Lanawa, Karan, Hayot, Lakorab, Ha'aim. Blessed are you, Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai that gives to us the olive oil to anoint Israel. Barakata Yahweh, Ba'ashim Yahweh Shai, Asherat, Nathan Lanawa, Hasheman, Zayef, Lamashak, Yasha'ala, Yeshabah. You see that. Okay, so Shalom Yasharala.
Shalom. Shalom.
So Shalom everybody that's here in Philly. Shalom everybody watching on live stream, and Shalom everybody listening in on teleconference. Welcome to Hayashala Kanas, or the Congregation of Israel, where we teach that the descendants of slaves, as well as the indigenous peoples found throughout North, Central, South America, and the Caribbean, make up the southern and northern kingdoms of the 12 tribes of Israel, and that we fall into a lower state politically, economically, even religiously, because we broke the laws of God, found the Bible given to us by Moses, and that we come out of this lower state that we fall into by turning back to these commandments we broke by following Jesus Christ as our example. And one way we do that is by keeping the Sabbath holy from Friday sundown to Saturday sundown every week. And as we do our particular branch, we go into a regular schedule as far as a Sabbath service. We go into a particular reading. We're back in the Old Testament this week, reading 2 Samuel's 5 and 6, as you see in the header. Once again, 2 Samuel's 5 and 6. That's going to be our reading today. And if you don't know already, we read out of the King James Version Bible because it's the best translation from the original Hebrew and Greek. When you compare it, compared to other versions of the Bible that are out there. So we want to make sure we get the best understanding possible, right? Even though we know that things lose force when they're translated from the original tongue, which is Hebrew, we can still get the understanding, as the prophecy states, where stammering lips in another tongue or language will he speak to this people. So we are part of that prophecy now, us and other branches of Christ that are out there, waking up to the truth about who we are as a people. All right. And my name is Nabia Zerubbabel. I'll be going through the service today. And apologies once again for the lateness as we work through some technical difficulties. And I'll usually be finishing up the service right about now. So we'll try to go through it with brevity, right? We'll be brief yet complete as possible as we go through these two chapters of 2 Samuel 5 and 6. But you got a late start. Write down for your notes that today, according to the Gregorian calendar, it would be January 14th, 2023. But then according to our calendar, the Hebrew calendar, it would be the 10th month and the 23rd day. Once again, the 10th month and the 23rd day. So picking up where we left off in 2 Samuel's, we know the last two chapters we're talking about. The transition of power didn't happen right away from the house of Saul, since we know at the end of 1 Samuel, Saul ended up dying in battle. But you still had those that fought on Saul's behalf that wanted to continue his reign, at least with whoever would be next in line from his house, namely his general Abner, right? And we see the dealings that David and Abner had and the peace that they were able to broker. But then Joab, David's top general or captain of the host, ended up getting revenge even after he brokered a peace with him for the death of his younger brother Asahel in battle, right? When they had fought before. So now in these next two chapters, we're going to see David's elevation. As we're going to see, he was king in Hebron first, which was a chief city in the region of Judah in the south. But then after so many years of their ruling, he would then be elevated to rule over all the tribes of Israel, just as Saul did before him. So we're going to read about that transition in these next couple chapters and in the events that followed after that. So this is 2 Samuel chapter 5 and verse 1. Which reads, Then came all the tribes of Israel to David unto Hebron, and spake, saying, Behold, we are thy bone and thy flesh. Right? So off the bat, we have a good verse we like to use here to show this expression that comes up more often than not, but it's important for us to know exactly what this means, right? When you see this expression of being someone's bone and of their flesh, just be mindful that this is talking about being kindred or being relatives, related to someone. You see that of my flesh, of my bone statement. You can just write down as a link, First Chronicles 11:1, where it says the same thing. We're going to get this again when we get into Chronicles. We'll cover a lot of the history that we're reading here in Samuel's and Kings, but you'll find details in Chronicles you may not find in Samuel and Kings, and vice versa. Kind of like when we read the Gospels together, you'll see the same instance, but sometimes you'll get more information when you read the different Gospels together about, Christ giving a certain parable or a certain instance in history when Christ was doing certain things or saying certain things during his ministry. So First Chronicles 11:1, which pretty much says the same thing, dealing with the same history. But let me get this too. Let's go to Genesis, because we see this also being used. During the time of Jacob, when he was working for his father-in-law Laban, right? So let's go to Genesis as well. Genesis chapter 29 to link with this. So Genesis chapter 29. And this is verse 14. Genesis chapter 29 and verse 14. It reads, And Laban said unto him, the hand we read above is Jacob, Surely thou art my bone and my flesh. It says, and he abode with him the space of a month. Right? And the reason why he says that is because when you read this story, you find Laban, him being his uncle, he's his father. He's actually his uncle because he's his mother's brother, right? Laban is Rebecca's brother. When you go into the family line, he will become his father-in-law later, as you read on in the story. So that's Genesis 29 and 14. And just to show that connection, that relationship, it says it in more than one place, but I'll just read this one in Genesis 25 and in verse 20. So Genesis 25 and 20. It reads, it says, and Isaac was 40 years old when he took Rebekah to wife, the daughter of Bethuel, the Syrian of Padan Aram, the sister to Laban, the Syrian, right? You don't be taken back there when you see Syrian, because now you might think, oh, so if he's related to Jacob, does that mean Jacob was a Syrian? Because you'll see him being referred to as a Syrian as well. What this is talking about is the region that they lived in, right? So you had Hebrews that were in Syria as well as the people of Syria, which we go into the table of nations. They were known as Aramites. That's why you'll see here the place being called Padan Aram, right? Which just means the plains of Aram. So anytime you see instances of Hebrews being called Syrians, namely Laban, like we see here, or even Jacob later on in Genesis. It's just talking about the region that they were in. So just to show that kindred between Laban and Jacob, them being uncle and nephew. So back to 2 Samuel 5. Let's read on in verse 2 now. Oh, before we do, we get this also. Genesis chapter 2. Because this was what was talking about as well when we read this in Genesis, which we know things are the scriptures, some things are literal, some things are figurative, right? Or allegory. So when we read that story about Adam, right, being made of the dust of the ground, namely when the Most High calls a deep sleep to fall upon him, and in taking a rib out of him to make a woman, what that's going into is, like we're reading here, them being kindred, meaning what? Them being related. Just like the Most High said, for us to marry of our own nation, not to marry the other nations. That understanding was even during that time of Adam as well. As we know, that breath of life that was breathed into Adam is what made him a living soul. The breath of life referring to, when you read other scriptures, the laws, statutes, and commandments. But let's show that real quick. We're going to see him use the same expression. Genesis chapter 2, I'll start from 21. Genesis 2 and 21, which reads, and the Lord God, or Yahweh power, caused a deep sleep to fall upon Adam, and he slept. And he took one of his ribs and closed up the flesh thereof, instead thereof. 22, and the rib which Yahweh power had taken from man, made he a woman, and brought her unto the man. 23. And Adam said, this is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman, because she was taken out of man. Then it says in 24, therefore shall a man leave his father and mother, and shall cleave unto his wife, and they shall be one flesh. Right? So talking about marriage, right? When you come together, when a man comes together with a woman, but also talking about them being bone of my bones, flesh of my flesh, meaning they were kindred, that they were related. Because just like you have after the flood, before the flood, you had this understanding as well as far as marrying within your tribe or within your nation, not going outside. So I stopped there in 24. And Thawada, to the elder online, he mentions Judges 9, 1-3 as well, which is another good link where you'll see this same expression being used as far as bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh, or you are my flesh and bone. And I'll get that real quick since we're talking about it. Judges chapter 9, in verse 1, it reads, and Abimelech, the son of Jerubbaal, went to Shechem unto his mother's brethren, and communed with them and with all the family of the house of his mother's father, saying, speak, I pray to you, in the ears of all the men of Shechem, whether it is better for you, either that all the sons of Jerubbaal, which are 70 persons, reign over you, or that one reign over you. Remember also that I am your bone and your flesh. So there you see that expression used again, like we see in 2 Samuel, like we saw in Genesis 29, as well as Genesis 2. 3, and his mother's brethren spake of him in the ears of all the men of Shechem all these words, and their hearts inclined to follow Abimelech, for they said, he is our brother. Right? So there it is being used again. So let's go back to 2 Samuel 5. Let's read on now in verse 2, after all those link ups. So 2 Samuel 5:2 reads, also in time past when Saul was king over us, this is still the heads of the tribes coming to meet with David, talking to him. Thou wast he that led us out and brought us in Israel. And the Lord, or Yahweh, said unto thee, thou shalt feed my people Israel, and thou shalt be a captain over Israel. So they were familiar with David, right? As we know, at first he was Saul's armor bearer, But then we saw David rise into prominence, right? Being under Saul's command, right? So they were already familiar with him going out and coming in before them in battle, right? So it wasn't like he was a stranger, someone they'd never seen before, or has seen a track record as far as him being thorough when it comes to, going to battle and things like that. So it says in verse 3, so all the elders of Israel came to the king to Hebron, and King David made a league with them in Hebron before Yahweh, and they anointed David king over Israel. So they came down to him in Judah, in Hebron, and it says they anointed him king over Israel. So now, instead of just being over Judah and Benjamin, right, and the Levites that were there, now he's going to be over all the tribes, right? And we saw, unfortunately, what happened with Abner and Joab. We saw this was Abner's wish too, right? So this could have happened sooner, even though there was a situation that took place that we read about before last time we read this. So all things in due time, right? The Most High's will be done. Because this promise was made to him before. And they acknowledged that. So now 2 Samuel 5 and 4, it says, now I'm going to do an overview where we're going to go into these events in detail to go forward, reading through 2 Samuel. It says in chapter 5, verse 4, David was 30 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 40 years. In Hebron, he reigned over Judah 7 years and 6 months, so 7.5 years. And in Jerusalem, he reigned 30 and 3 years over all Israel and Judah. So it's going into his 40-year reign and how it was broken up into 7 years and a half as well as 33 years, right? So that was a long period. He was just a king in Hebron, right? 7.5 years, right? But it would be an even longer time him reigning over all Israel. But like I said, if you go through 2 Samuel, we'll get more of that history too. Because when we read events in the scriptures, sometimes they'll be mentioned back to back, and it's hard to kind of have a perception of time as far as dispensation. But just this gives us an idea of, we talk about all the events that led up to him being Saul's armor bearer, to him fleeing from Saul, to him being on the run, to the Most High sending men that were distressed and discontented to help him out, right? All the way up to the time of this event here. That was 7 years and 6 months, even though it may not seem like that much time has gone by, but we'll only see the events that are touched on here. 6, and the king and his men went to Jerusalem unto the Jebusites, the inhabitants of the land, which spake unto David, saying, except thou take away the blind and the lame, thou shalt not come in hither, thinking David cannot come in hither. Right? So the Most High will leave, as he told us, even going back to the time of Moses, he'll leave the nations behind to prove us, right? To see what we're going to do when it comes to different situations that we're faced with when taking the land. So now we have these Canaanites that came out of Jebus, right? When we read about that long list of Canaanites we're supposed to take out, we see Jebusites on that list. So at this time, they had the city, and it was theirs, right? And they named it after themselves, Jebus in particular. But we know later on it will become Jerusalem, but now here's this history. So this was in the south, actually in where Judah and Benjamin were at. You go into the history of this place. But you see the Most High these nations here is to kind of taunt David to say, oh, yeah, he can't take it because surely he's blind and lame. Right? There's even a law that even goes into, coming to the congregation, how you need to be whole in order to do things that are wholly pertaining to God, certain things, where it says you can't have you can't be a crookback or a dwarf or have your privy member cut off and things like that. So it's almost like an allusion or a reference to that, saying he can't come down. But we'll see what happens after this. But now for the history of Jebus and the Jebusites in this city, when you read in verse 7, it says, "Nevertheless, David took the stronghold of Zion, the same as the city of David." So he would end up taking this. But now we can go back to Joshua 15. Joshua chapter 15. Which this is going into different cities that were in the area toward the terrain of Judah and Benjamin. The last verse, Joshua 15 and 63, which reads, "As for the Jebusites, the inhabitants of Jerusalem, the children of Judah could not drive them out, but the Jebusites dwelt with the children of Judah at Jerusalem unto this day." So by the time of the end of Joshua and Caleb and their campaign, they hadn't taken this just yet. But now is the time come for them to take this over and actually make it, as we're going to see, our capital city. So you had still some of them that were remaining there. But now some more history on Jebus and who had it before and how we went to go take it and how it took some time before we ultimately conquered it entirely. Judges chapter 1, we'll read verse 8, and then we'll also get I'll jump down to 16. So Judges chapter 1 and verse 8, it reads, "Now the children of Judah had fought against Jerusalem and had taken it and smitten it with the edge of the sword and set the city on fire." But now jumping down to verse 16, it says, "And the children of the Kenite, Moses' father-in-law, went up out of the city of palm trees with the children of Judah into the wilderness of Judah, which lieth in the south of Arad. And they went and dwelt among the people. And Judah went with Simeon his brother, and they slew the Canaanites that inhabited Zephath and utterly destroyed it. And the name of the city was called Hormah." So going to another place they took. 18, "Also Judah took Gaza with the coast thereof, and Ashkelon with the coast thereof, and Ekron with the coast thereof." Right? All those being along what today they call the West Bank, right? Going on that side, where the Philistines were, which we're going to read about them a little bit later in 2 Samuel's. It says, and the Lord of Yahweh was with Judah, and he drave out the inhabitants of the mountain, but could not drive out the inhabitants of the valley because they had chariots of iron. Right? So logistically, it was tough to take on them. Not to say the Most High couldn't give them the power to have success against them, but they were a strong, fortified nation. So the Most High, when he gave us things, right, when he gave us promises, at the same time, he set a challenge out there for us to go and take it. The Most High giving us his blessing, right? So it was like a dual thing. It wasn't just like the Most High would just say, "Okay, I'm going to bless you, here you go." We had to earn our keep. It says, "And they gave Hebron unto Caleb, as Moses said, and he expelled thence the 3 sons of Anak." Those are the Anakims, right?
Giants.
Exactly. So you read about those battles as far as Caleb, him and Joshua being pretty thorough when it came to battle and being having fidelity when it came to trusting in the Lord, even during their time in the wilderness, whereas the rest of their generation didn't. Then it says, "And the children of Benjamin did not drive out the Jebusites that inhabited Jerusalem, but the Jebusites dwelt with the children of Benjamin in Jerusalem unto this day." So now in 2 Samuel 5, this is going to change, right? But just a little background history on Jebus, the Jebusites in Jerusalem. because a number of the cities that we had in Israel, they had one name before that the Canaanites gave them, but then when we conquered them, we gave them new names, right? Since we had dominion over it afterwards. So back to 2 Samuel 5, let's read on in verse 8. So 2 Samuel 5 and 8, it reads, and David said on that day, whosoever getteth up to the gutter and smite the Jebusites, and the lame and the blind that are hated of David's soul, he shall be chief and captain. Wherefore they said, the blind and lame shall not come into the house. So David, right? He was a warrior, but not a warmonger, right? As we're going to see in 2 Samuel's, right? It says the law states, when it comes to the different nations, right? Outside of Canaan, it tells us to proclaim peace unto them, right? To say, we're Israel, we're up and rising. If you pay us tribute, right, you'll be all right, right? We won't come in and take over. But if they didn't pay tribute, or they said, we would not, that you would rule over us, that's when we go to battle with them, right? So it was already in the law to deal with the Canaanites anyway. But now to add insult to injury, when I say deal with them, I mean to take them out. Because the Most High want us to have dominion over that land because they didn't have it or they didn't govern it properly because of their wickedness and all their idols. But now to add insult to injury, they want to make this comment about, oh, you know, only if you take away the blind and the lame can you come in. So David pretty much returned that same wickedness back on their head, right? And so they want to make that statement to us, so we're going to bring that to them now. And we see you read different writings of David, you know, he gets this instinct or gets this insight from the Most High, seeing when it comes to the Most High and how he judges, he does it the same way, right? He's like, holds a mirror up to you, right? Where if you show yourself merciful, then he'll show mercy towards you. But if you show yourself froward, he'll show himself froward back unto you. So this is a good example of that. And David being an instrument of the Heavenly Father, he's following that same judgment as far as how the Most High operates. Let's get that example real quick. This is in Psalms 18. I see your hand. Psalms chapter 18. I'll start from 23. So Psalms 18 and 23, it reads, I was also upright before him, and I kept myself from mine iniquity. 24. Therefore hath Yahweh recompensed me according to my righteousness, according to the cleanness of my hands, and in his eyesight. So he wrote this kind of towards the end of 2 Samuel, as far as him having a bunch of victories against the heathen through the power of the Most High. But we'll probably come back to this as we get further on in 2 Samuel. But I just want to read this one aspect here where David can speak on this from experience, right? It says in verse 25, with the merciful, thou wilt show thyself merciful. With an upright man, thou wilt show thyself upright. Then it says in 26, with the pure, thou wilt show thyself pure. And with the froward, thou wilt show thyself froward. So froward, when you look at that, it just means unruly, right? That's what it means when it says froward. Not to be confused with forward, but froward. So that's Psalms 18, 23 to 26. Let's go back to 2 Samuel 5. Let's read on in 9 and continue on. So 2 Samuel 5 and 9. It reads, so David dwelt in the fort and called it the city of David. And David built round about from Millo and inward, right? So I know we usually do this where we'll share the map. So this is this free online Bible atlas that you can access. I have here the sections highlighted, right? we can see here, I zoom in, sure it's not too small, but if you see here where you see number 5, David captured Jebusite strongholds. This is the region where it's at. And you see where Hebron's at a little bit further down. You see the city of Jebus would then become Jerusalem. You see where it's situated east of Jericho, and you see the Dead Sea towards the southeast of that, right? And we see this Rephaim Valley, right? Where you see some of the land is elevated somewhat. But this is where David fought with the Jebusites. Just that you guys have an idea. It's like right here you see number 5. But let's continue on. Let's continue on reading. So this is 2 Samuel 5 and verse 11. It reads, "And Hiram, king of Tyre, sent messages to David, and cedar trees, and carpenters, and masons, and they built David an house." Right? So this is important here to read about this particular king of Tyre, Hiram. He's going to come up later when we get into 1 Kings, as this relationship that David is establishing with him is going to continue on with his son Solomon, right? When his son Solomon will become would reign over all Israel, not only just to build David a house, which he's doing here, but to also not only build Solomon a house, but also to eventually build a temple, which would then become the next thing to build that next level as far as a place of praise that would even excel the tabernacle, right? But we'll get to that later on when we get to 1 Kings. So we see Hiram, the king of Tyre, being around during the time of David at this time. It says in verse 12, "And David perceived that the Lord, or Yahweh, had established him king over Israel, and that he had exalted his kingdom for his people Israel's sake." Right? So David hearing this promise from being a young lad, now realizing that, wow, okay, through the blood, sweat, and tears that I've experienced from that time up until now it's finally that time, right, for me to be king over all Israel, right? So now I can begin my reign, because like we read in the previous chapters, it was quite a journey for him to get to this point, right? And a lot of trials and tribulations that he went through before he got to this point. And it's easy for us to go through a fraction of that may not have had the level of faith and diligence that he had, to maybe give up hope and to say, you know what, maybe the Most High is not with me. Maybe the Most High didn't choose me. Look all these horrible things I'm going through, right? But all these things were just to prove David and to sharpen his edge, to prepare him for this responsibility, this great responsibility to be the ruler over God's chosen people. So now, reading on in verse 13, it says, "And David took him more concubines and wives out of Jerusalem after he was come from Hebron, and there were yet sons and daughters born to David," right? So him having a period of peace and being able to establish himself, now he's extending his line, right, by taking more wives and having sons and daughters. Now it's going to name some of these folks too, which they're not all going to be, born just at once. It's just kind of giving us a list. Just like we read earlier, it talks about him reigning for 40 years. The 40 years are not happening yet, right? It's going to happen throughout the course of 2 Samuel. Same thing with this too, as far as him taking wives and concubines and having more children. This is going to happen over a dispensation of time as you read through 2 Samuel. It reads in 14, "And these be the names of those that were born unto him in Jerusalem: Shemua, and Shobab, and Nathan, and Solomon, Ibhar also, and Elishua, and Napeg, and Japhia, and Elishama, and Eliada, and Eliphalet," right? And those, it's interesting to read through those names, right? Especially Nathan and Solomon. I know we were talking about that not too long ago, we're going into the promise that the Most High made to David, which we're going to see not today. We're going to read it probably next time in 2 Samuel 7. Not today, but the next time we have a Sabbath, going into 2 Samuel's, about the Most High having his son to come down through David's loins to sit on the throne, right? Now we look at Christ and we look at his lineage from both his parents, right? From Joseph and from Mary. You'll see that what? Just to show the Most High that he's true. He's not a man that he should lie, right? On Joseph's side and on Mary's side, they both share common ancestry through David. But then it mentions how on Joseph's line, he comes through his son Solomon. But on Mary's side, she comes through his son Nathan. But we see both of those sons, out of his many sons, we see both of those sons being mentioned here, Nathan and Solomon, as his descendants. Two of his descendants would come together to have Christ. So it just shows how, the Most High, even though things might take long from where we stand, but the Most High has all these things just orchestrated and set up to happen according to his will, right? When it comes to us, when it comes to the other nations, as far as whatever he has appointed. But now, reading on, this is in 2 Samuel's 5 and 17. So here comes, like I was mentioning earlier, another one of our nemesis, right? Especially on the western side of Israel, going towards the West Bank, the Philistines, right? We just didn't take them out right away, right? They were like a thorn in our side to where we constantly did battle with them. And here we go again. Just as King Saul had battle with them, we're going to see King David had battle with them as well, and those of his men, as we go throughout 2 Samuel. 17, but when the Philistines heard that they had anointed David king over Israel, all the Philistines came up to seek David. And David heard it and went down to the hold. And the Philistines also, 18, the Philistines also came and spread themselves in the valley of Rephaim. Remember on the map I showed you, we saw that mountain range, that elevated region that was east to Jerusalem, where you saw the Philistines, they actually inhabited those regions, like I said, going towards the West Bank, as we call it now. So they spread themselves in the valley of Rephaim, like setting themselves in array, right? Because, you got to think the Philistines, the last we read about them, they were rejoicing, right? And that King Saul was taken out, right? And his son. And, that they were able to have that victory, right? But now you hear this. Now imagine him hearing this news. Oh man, they have a new champion, right? And not only that, it's it's David of all people, right? Because we know David definitely has a reputation among them, him taking out their champion Goliath, right? Yeah, that was some time ago, but don't think that the Philistines forgot about that, right? So, we can imagine them groaning, right, when they hear this. Oh no, David's their ruler now. Oh man, we got to deal with him. Right?
He took 10,000.
Yeah. So, this was not pleasing to their ears hearing this, right? So it says, and David inquired of Yahweh, saying, shall I go up to the Philistines? Wilt thou deliver them into mine hand? So David doing something very important. He's taking counsel with the Most High, right? Going to him. Not taking matters to his own hands to say, yeah, I want to go and fight them, but he wants to make sure that it's of the Most High's will that he go and do battle with them, right? So he wants the Most High's will to be done first. Something that's always important for us to do, especially if we're in a leadership position like David. But even if you're not, even if you don't have as much responsibilities as say David did, you still want to take this approach, right? When figuring out what to say and what to do in different matters. Small matters are great. This, of course, being a great matter, the Philistines being our sworn enemy. So he's asking the Most High, should I go against them and will you deliver them into my hand? It says, and Yahweh said to David, go up, for I will doubtless deliver the Philistines into thine hand. So the Heavenly Father gives David his blessing and says, yes, go forth, battle with them, and you will have the victory, right? So it's showing that closeness and bond that he had with David and his trust in him, as we see throughout the scriptures, right? The Most High talks about David being a man after his own heart, right? We should fulfill all his will. So they had this closeness. So he told him, yes, go and fight them, and I will deliver them into your hand. Now, reading on in verse 20, it says, and David came to Baal Perazim, and David smote them there and said, the Lord or Yahweh have broken forth upon mine enemies before me, as the breach of waters. Wherefore he called the name of that place Baal Perazim, right? And it's funny because that Perez or Faraz in the Hebrew, you'll see that name kind of being used for a couple different reasons to name different places, right? Which that word Perez, it's interesting because it even goes back to an ancestor in our tribe of Judah named Pharez, which that word in the Hebrew just means to breach, right? So that significance of them calling this place Baal Perazim, because a breach was made, as it says, as a breach of waters. Hence, that's why they named the region that place as like a memorial. Just a little chronicle trivia, which we'll touch on this again when we go through First Chronicles. But the person I'm talking about that has that name, Pharez, I'll get it real quick, and we'll see why he was named Pharez, going back into the tribe of Judah's ancestry. This is Genesis chapter 38. Genesis chapter 38. I'm gonna go to the end of the story, but you read the story as a whole, it just talks about the way that Judah will finally have descendants, which would be not through his sons, but will be through his sons, but not with, it would end up being sons they would have with his daughter-in-law, right? But you're going through the law as far as the laws of nakedness. You're supposed to uncover the nakedness of your near kin. But because he wouldn't give his daughter-in-law his third son, or he was reluctant to do so, it doesn't say why per se. And she'd already had his two elder boys, and they had died due to their wickedness. Tamar took matters to her own hands by disguising herself as a harlot and then laying with Judah, and then Judah then impregnating her with twin boys, right? And it kind of goes into what happened there when he found out, and he was ready to go and judge her on the spot. But then when she showed her, look, here's a token that you gave me, right? When I was disguised, Judah acknowledged the error of his own way by not giving her his third son. Him speaking on her righteousness being her being more righteous than I, because he didn't give her Shelah, his youngest son. So it was a hairy situation, but that's the thing about the scriptures. The good, the bad, and the ugly, it's all there, right? From the good that we did as well as the wicked or the bad that we did. So it says in verse 27, and it came to pass in the time of her travail that, behold, twins were in her womb, 28, and it came to pass when she travailed that the one put out his hand, and the midwife took and bound upon his hand a scarlet thread, saying, this came out first. And it came to pass, as he drew back his hand, that behold, his brother came out. And she said, how hast thou broken forth? This breach be upon thee. Therefore, his name was called Pharez, right? So that's how he got his name. So you see Pharez or Perez in different places. It's referring to that idea of breaching or breaking forth. Then it says in verse 30, afterward came out his brother that had the scarlet thread upon his hand, and his name was called Zerah. So you're the one who's getting ready to be born, and then His twin brother said, me first. Come back here. I'm coming out first. So that's what happened with Perez and made him be the firstborn as opposed to Zerah, even though they were twins. But we'll see Perez come up again as we read on, and that being used to name a place as well before another kind of breach, or another kind of breaking forth. So that was 27 of Genesis 38. And I stopped, I think, at what? Exodus. (30), 27 to 30. There we go. But now back in 2 Samuel 5, in verse 21, it says, and there they left their images, and David and his men burned them. So they wouldn't even leave any opportunity or any chance for any of our people to pick up those images that they had set up and to worship those images. So destroy the Philistines and destroy their images too that they trusted in, right? Reading on, it says in 22, and the Philistines came up yet again and spread themselves in the valley of Rephaim. So they battled again. They set the battle in array again in this valley we saw on that map. And when David inquired of Yahweh, and he said, thou shalt not go up, but fetch a compass behind them and come upon them over against the mulberry trees. And let it be, when thou hearest the sound of a going in the tops of the mulberry trees, that then thou shalt bestir thyself, but then thou shalt Yahweh go out before thee to smite the host of the Philistines. So in this other battle, the Most High advised them otherwise, right? Before he said, meet them head on. This time he said, this time go to their flanks and then go to the place on their side and then reside in this place where mulberry trees are, right? A certain type of tree, right? And he says, and wait for a sound to go through the tops of the mulberry trees. So he's giving David instruction how to battle him this time and was signal to wait for. So I don't know if the sound was like a sound of like wind blowing, whatever it was. But whatever it was, it would be enough for David to know and those with him to know, okay, we're on the side of them now. And now we hear that sound going through the trees. Now we know it's time to fall upon the Philistines. So it says in 25, and David did so as Yahweh had commanded him. And he smote the Philistines from Geba until thou come into Gaza. Right? So now showing how far down they went to go smite them. So let's see on the map here if we can actually see these places. We see the valley here. I'm not sure this map. We see here. Where's Geba? Okay, I don't think I see it here in this map. I don't think I see Gaza either. But we know it was taking place somewhere in this region that we see in this red square. Let's see if this map touches on. Okay, here we go. I think this map goes into more detail. So down here you see number 6. That's where this battle takes place, right? So we see the Philistines coming with this line on the left from Gath on over, and then us meeting them here in the valley of Rephaim to fight. Okay, just so you can have like a visual. So let's go back to now 2 Samuel. Let's read on now in verse 7 and verse 1 and continue. And throughout the elder for the scripture to link with verse 21 of 5 and 21 of 2 Samuel, you've got Deuteronomy chapter 7, 25 and 26. Let's get that real quick before we read on in chapter 6. So Deuteronomy 7:25, it reads, the graven images of their gods shall ye burn with fire. Thou shalt not desire the silver or gold that is on them, nor take it unto thee, lest thou be snared therein, for it is an abomination to Yahweh thy power. So that gold and silver is like corrupted now because they use it to make an idol. Most High said, destroy it. Don't use it. Don't take it for a spoil. And they got spoils of silver that are used for like other things that aren't idols, maybe like containers or currency, what have you. That's fine. But now if you got it being used to make an idol, he said, no, take it out, destroy it. Then it says in 26, now they shalt thou bring an abomination into thine house, lest thou be a cursed thing like it. But thou shalt utterly detest it, and thou shalt utterly abhor it, for it is a cursed thing. This is also reminiscent too of, I know you guys read this in Joshua some months back, right? About Achan of Judah during the time of Joshua, who kept to the accursed things, right? They were supposed to destroy as they were fighting the Canaanites. It talks about, the Most High setting a curse throughout the camp. And then Joshua, running through the camp trying to figure out, what's going on? Why are we getting smitten like this, right? We're doing everything. I thought we were doing everything we're supposed to do. They finally found the culprit. And then when they brought him before the judges, he said, oh, I took a Babylonish garment and some other things and hid it. And we see Joshua kind of operate like how David is now, the whole, with the froward, when the Most High, if you show yourself froward, the Most High will show himself froward. If you show yourself merciful, the Most High will show himself merciful unto you. So it was like a reap what you sow scenario where you said, why have you troubled us today? Today the Lord troubled thee. And it says how they put Achan and his family to death that took that accursed thing. Just to set precedence, right? So everyone else could hear and fear. This is something that the Most High said don't do. If you get caught doing it, this will be your fate. So once again, the good, the bad, and the ugly, it's all there in the scriptures, right? For us to read and learn from. Right? We don't have that opportunity like the other nations do to go into history and put flowers on it and, dress it up and use euphemisms and say, oh, this is what actually happened. And they try to take away from, whatever bad their past rulers may have done. So let's go back to 2 Samuel 6, but Thwada for that verse. 2 Samuel 6, let's read in verse 1. 2 Samuel 6 and 1, it reads, again, David gathered together all the chosen men of Israel, 30,000. He's got himself a pretty strong squad here, right? Not like in 1 Samuel, right, where he's just him and a couple hundred men, right? Between 400 and 600 men going back and forth, being on the run. Now he rules over all Israel. Now we can take those skills you learn by commanding a small force and then apply those to commanding an even larger force, right? Oh, looks like I got another link here for chosen men. So we got Judges 7, 4-7. I'll get that real quick before we read on. Thwada Elder again for the link. Judges 7 and 4. Let's get that real quick. Get the understanding. So this is Judges chapter 7. Back to Jerubbaal again. Chapter 9 was going to his descendants. And it's talking about Jerubbaal himself, who, if you don't know already, he's, as it says here, his name is Gideon, right? One of our most notable judges we read about as far as our judges during that time period. I think you go into his house, he came out of the tribe of Manasseh, and you read about him. So now jumping down to verse 4, it says, and Yahweh said unto Gideon, the people are yet too many. Bring them down into the water, and I will try them for thee there. And it shall be that of whom I say unto thee, this shall go with thee, the same shall go with thee. And of whomsoever I say unto thee, this shall not go with thee, the same shall not go. 5. So he brought down the people into the water, and Yahweh said unto Gideon, every one that lappeth of the water with his tongue, as a dog lappeth, him shalt thou set by himself. Likewise, everyone that boweth not down upon his knees to drink. And the number of them that lapped, putting their hand to their mouth, were 300 men. But the rest of the people bowed down upon their knees to drink water. And Yahweh said unto Gideon, by the 300 men that lapped will I save you, and deliver the Midianites into thine hand, and let all the other people go, every man unto his place. Right? So during this time of Gideon, he's letting them know, look, as David would know too, and he would experience, the Most High can save with few or with many, right? And going through Maccabees, we see the same thing during the time of the sons of Mattathias, with Judas, Simon, Jonathan, and the rest. The Most High can save with few or with many, right? It's all depending upon his will, right? So if you have more, that's good, right? But even if you have less, it can still be better for you and for the faith of those that remain, right? But now at this time, we see David having a pretty strong force here, 30,000. Let's go back to 2 Samuel 6. See the difference being with the strangers, they totally trust in their arm, the flesh of their arm and their own strength. Whereas we use the flesh of our arm, but when it fails, we trust in the Most High. But we know that the Most High is the one who delivers the battle in the end, whether we have the munition or not, the armaments or not, the manpower or not. 2 Samuel 6 and 2. And David arose and went with all the people that were with him from Baal of Judah to bring up from thence the ark of God, whose name is called by the name of Yahweh, of hosts that dwelleth between the cherubims, right? So now, as David is king, he's going to try to set things up, right? Namely, to get the ark, right? Because that was a key thing that we used when we went back and forth, when we went out to battle, right? And we know too that when we fought against the when we fought against the Philistines, we know that was one of the things that they got to take, right? When we lost them at a certain juncture, right? We read about them taking the ark and how during the time they had it in their possession, how they were smitten with hemorrhoids, which is the old-fashioned way of saying hemorrhoids, right? And they had other issues, and they said, look, get that ark out of here, right? It's been a thorn in our side ever since we took it. So now David's getting that ark and then bringing it back where it belongs, right? It says in 3, and remember where it says that dwelt between the cherubims. When we read about the Ark of the Covenant, that's what it would do, right? We used to keep it in the holiest of holy places, right? So we had the Ark of, when we had the tabernacle of the congregation set up, you had the altar burnt off and right outside. That's where the priests were, the sons of Aaron. Once you go past that first partition, that's the holy place. Inside there, if you were to go in there as a priest, you have your candlestick on the left, you get your table of showbread on the right, you get your altar incense in the middle towards the back. You go past the altar of incense, you have a veil there, right? But you go behind that veil, only the high priest, which was one of the sons of Aaron, every generation had a high priest. Only he would go back there one time in a year to go into the Ark of the Covenant, right? During the time of the Day of Atonement, you read the law. But it says on that Ark of the Covenant, that's where the Most High would manifest his presence there and rest between the cherubims, because you read about the design of the Ark of the Covenant, or the Ark of the Testimony. We put a lid on it. It was like a box, a golden box, shittim wood laid with gold. And on the lid, it had 2 cherubims facing each other with their wings, pointing one to another. And if you want, more details on that, you can go to Exodus. Exodus chapter 25, 10 down to 25. That's where you see the instruction given by Moses to make this after he gathered raw materials from all the different tribes. But when Moses was on the mount with the Most High, he showed him different things in his vision. And one of those things was the design for this Ark of the Covenant. So once again, Exodus 25, 10 down to 22. I'll just read in verse 22, the last verse. It says, I'll start from 21. I'll read the last two in this link. It says in verse 21, "Now shall put the mercy seat above upon the ark, and in the ark thou shalt put the testimony that I shall give thee." 22, "And there I will meet with thee, and I will commune with thee from above the mercy seat, from between the two cherubims, which are upon the ark of the testimony, of all things which I will give thee in commandment unto the children of Israel." So that's the same ark of the testimony that we're talking about here, that David's going to recover. So now back in 2 Samuel 6, reading on in verse 3, it says, "And they set the ark of God upon a new cart and brought it out of the house of Abinadab that was in Gibeah." It says, "And Uzzah and Ahio, the sons of Abinadab, drave the new cart." It says, "And they brought it out of the house of Abinadab, which was at Gibeah, accompanying the ark of God, and Ahio went before the ark." It says, "And David and all the house of Israel played before Yahweh on all manner of instruments made of fir wood, even on harps and on psalteries and on cymbals and on cornets and on cymbals." Right? So this is a grand occasion, right? Like a big marching band, marching force, right? Coming down as they brought this Ark of the Testimony from Abinadab's place in Gibeah down to Jerusalem, right? To set it up in that city. And I think if we look on here again, we can they've got a depiction here of this process where we see number 7, David transfers Ark to Jerusalem, coming from this city here. This is a Canaanite name, Kirjath Jearim, but then bring it back to here, which is Jebus, right? In their travels to take it back. Let's see if there's anything else here in this next map. No, we're not there yet. Okay. Good. So let's go back to reading. It says in verse 6, "And when they came to Nashon's threshing floor, Uzzah put forth his hand to the ark of God and took hold of it, for the oxen shook it." It says, "And the anger of Yahweh was kindled against Uzzah, and power smote him there for his error, and there he died by the ark of God." Right? So it says he was smote there for his error, and he died there. So I was talking about breaches happening earlier. So what was the breach here? Why was this a problem? Why did the Most High get angry at Uzzah for doing this? Anybody know? Say what?
He wasn't supposed to touch the ark.
He wasn't supposed to touch the ark. Right. Because you go into the law, it talks about when it comes to the holy vessels and things that pertain to the priests, that's for them to do. Right? Only under certain circumstances could allowances be made. Say in the case we see with David being on the run from Saul, he was able to partake of the showbread, right? But it was something that the priest had to bring to him. It wasn't like he was going up into where they were at to go and grab it for himself, right? But now in this case, this was a breach in that only the sons of Aaron were supposed to handle the Ark of the Testimony, right? So it's like partitions, right? We have the altar of burnt offering, right? Which is like outside the tabernacle, right before you go in. So that's like something that the priest and the people can handle. Then you get into the holy place, right? These are things only the priest can handle, right? As far as the candlestick, as far as the table of showbread, the altar of incense. Then you get the holiest of holies, which is especially important. And that's where the Ark of the Testimony was at, which is what this was. So the Ark of the Testimony, or the Ark of the Covenant, being the innermost part of the tabernacle, has significance. And that this thing is holy, holy, and sanctified, even to where even the sons of Aaron in general didn't really handle it like that. It was like only somewhere that even the high priest among the sons of Aaron would go before, and only during certain times of the year. So just by the design, it's showing us the tiers of importance as you go further into this tabernacle. When we get into First Kings, we'll see when Solomon sets up the temple, it's going to have a similar layout to the Ark of the similar layout to the tabernacle of the congregation. When he builds the Most High's temple, it's going to have a similar setup. We have the altar burnt offering outside, candlestick and a showbread and incense in the holy place, and the Ark of the Covenant in the innermost part, the holiest of holies. But instead of it being a tent, it's going to be in a building. And like I was saying earlier, you're going to see Hiram of Tyre have a hand in supplying some of the raw materials for that. But we'll get there when we finally get to that chapter in First Kings. Mm-hmm.
This is Numbers chapter 4, verse 15. To go to what you were saying as far as the sons of Aaron, it says, and when Aaron and his sons have made an end of covering the sanctuary and all the vessels of the sanctuary, as the camp is set to forward, after that the sons of Kohath shall come to bear it, but they shall not touch any holy thing lest they die. These things are the burden of the sons of Kohath in the tabernacle of the congregation. So it was their burden, it was their duty to now handle the holy vessels, the holy things. And if you was not of the sons of Kohath, then you was liable to be put to death if you wouldn't touch those things. So this man now who is near to the tabernacle, to the ark, because when you read, I think in Chronicles, it says that, you know, one of the oxen like stumbled a bit and he went to go touch it. And when he touched it, when the Most High went to jack him up.
Come.
That's what you just read, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That's the same thing, right?
Well, it's the wording might be a little different, like with like just same thing with like Gospels. You read it in both places to get more details.
Oh, good.
Did you want to get that in Chronicles, or since we're talking about it, so you can see the difference?
I wasn't getting. Which one are you talking about in Chronicles?
About the one with the ox stumbling.
Ain't this the same thing we're reading in 6? Oh, this is totally different.
What do you mean? Different from what?
In other words, somebody touched the ark and God smote him. This ain't the same thing that you're about to look up in Chronicles?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
It is the same.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right, but it's like
same story, just
what it's saying is the
Somebody,
wording.
somebody else told me.
Yeah, but the wording is different. Like it give you a little bit more insight. Like what you already in Chronicles doesn't say exactly the same in Samuel. So this is First Chronicles
13.
Yeah, chapter 13 and verse, where do I start?
I think verse 9.
9,
right?
kind of.
Yeah.
It says, and when they came unto the threshing floor of Shadon, Uzzah put forth his hand to hold the ark, for the oxen stumbled. And the anger of the Lord was kindled against Uzzah, and he smote him because he put his hand to the ark, and there he died before God.
Come. And the rest of this story and this rest of this chapter is going to sync up what we're reading in 2 Samuel 6. But we'll just get that link for verse 7. 1 Chronicles 13, 9 and 10. And you go into the family of of Moses, when we talk about the priests, I think it's in Exodus chapter 6. Let me see. Was it before that? Yeah, when you read, you don't get it, but when you write down Exodus chapter 6, 16 down to 20, it just shows that Aaron was a descendant of Levi through Kohath in particular. Just so we understand when we talk about the priests, that Aaron, Moses, and Miriam, they came out of Kohath. You go into their particular family. But the lineage is expressed there. It goes from Levi down to them. So Exodus chapter 6, 16 to 20. And link that with Numbers 4 and 15 of what Kahan read. But let's continue on back in 2 Samuel 5. Second Samuel chapter 6. This is verse 8. It says, and David was displeased because Yahweh had made a breach upon Uzzah. And they called the name of the place Perez Uzzah to this day. So there's another Perez in the name of a place again. But this breach, this breaking forth, being because him not coming from that family of Kohath went and touched the ark, right? So sometimes you may say in your own mind, okay, I think I might be helping the situation. But you're better off, not taking it upon yourself. The Most High gave a law, a principle for a reason. You want to adhere to it. You want to stick to it, right? Because it's easy for the Lord to keep that steady, right? Even if something did happen.
Right, and on the surface, someone can look at him like that. It's messed up. The Most High would go and smite him like that. Could have had mercy on him. He was holding up the Ark of the Covenant, right? He was trying to, make sure that it don't fall. Like, what's wrong with not making sure that it don't fall? Right. But again, like the Lord says, his ways are not our ways. We don't see what the Lord sees. Like, we don't know probably what's in his head. Like, he was probably close to the ark because he wanted to kind of really check it out. Like, get Nick.
Oh, he wasn't trying to really save it.
Yeah, we don't know. It doesn't tell you what his intentions is explicitly.
Right.
But the Most High knows more than what we also know when we read. So when we see something like that, and if you just read it and you don't trust in the Most High that he had a righteous judgment in order to do that, you would look at him like that. That's just messed up, man. Like, kind of God is that? I thought he was a merciful God. Like, why would he just go and kill him for trying to save the holy vessel? And we said, well, only the Kohath's sons were supposed to go and do it, but they wasn't there. Like, no one was around when they were stumbling. He was the only one there. But we don't know that he probably was easing himself up there to kind of look at all this stuff and try to do more than what's necessary in order to do it. We don't know that. We just trust that the Most High understood that what he needed to do was a righteous decision and not just something that was just haphazard. That's the thing that we got to always look at, that there's not always the right answer. There's not always the explicit answer given. Sometimes we just know that it's an implied righteous answer from the Most High.
Excellent point. And that's that ties into the whole attrite versus contrite. As far as doing the right thing out of fear of punishment versus doing the right thing out of a sense of duty, right? And then having like an evil suspicion. We want to make sure we don't have that, like you were touching on, as far as not just what you say and do, but why you say and do it, your motivations. Because, like I said, it could have been very well, he was just itching to touch it, and he just wanted to have an excuse to do so, right? Just because the ox stumbled didn't mean that was about to fall over. And I think we might have done this or probably experienced this where, you might have been something you wanted to do or somewhere you wanted to go, and then the person's kind of extra with it when they see something happening. They go, oh, oh. And you get to say, relax. It's not that big a deal, you know. It's going to be all right, you know. Like, hold your horses. We're going to the place, you know. It's kind of like a child being extra antsy, you know, to do something, you know. But like we said, the Most High knows. And you know, it's tough to endure too, especially when you're out there teaching, whether it be one-on-ones or at camp, where you got people that'll read these stories sometimes, and they'll bring them up, and they'll take that stance, like Kahan was touching on, you know, say, "You believe in that guy? You mean that guy that did this? That's kind of messed up, isn't it? You know?" And then you'll try to, you know, question the Most High's understanding without really having, you know, a deeper reasoning behind why the Most High does what He does. So they'll ask the question, but coming from the wrong spirit. So they'll ask the question saying, why would the Most High say that or do that? It should be asking from a humble spirit, wow, why did the Most High say that? Why did the Most High do that in that situation? For the person who's more like the latter, as far as their attitude versus the former, they'll be the ones that the Most High will be more than willing to give them an answer, to give them that understanding, right? Because you ask the question with more of an inquisitive nature, as opposed to, you know, asking it just to be a gainsayer, just to scorn the Most High and the question's authority and the question's reasoning, right? To almost place the Most High as if He's short-sighted, He's like, you know, foolish somehow, right? We know what Paul said in Corinthians. He said, you know, the foolishness of God is wiser than men, right? He says the weakness of God is stronger than men. So whatever we come up with, the Most High's foolishness, if He had it, would still be better. Whatever power we come up with through our technology, right? That'll still be weaker than God's weakness if He had it, right? So that's kind of what Paul is saying there in that verse. I'll read it real quick and then we'll continue on. Just see, I'm not just making a reference, but I like how he puts it here. Let me go to 1 Corinthians real quick. I think what you were touching on earlier, kind of think about the your arms too short to box with God. You know, it's that attitude. It's that stance you want to take. We can't get on the Most High's level, right? And we're privileged to be able to even see an aspect of what the Most High sees through what we're shown here in the Bible, right? We need not take that for granted. We need to think there upon with reverence, like it says in Ecclesiasticus 3. So this is 1 Corinthians chapter 1 and 25, where it reads, because the foolishness of God is wiser than men, and the weakness of God is stronger than men, right? So if God were foolish, if God were weak, that foolishness, that weakness would still excel any and everything we could ever come up with. It's just another way of saying, you know, little grasshopper, you have much to learn before you can begin to question the Most High on what He's got going on. Who's the master, right? So back to 2 Samuel 6. I'm reading on in verse 9. Well, let me read 8. And David was displeased because Yahweh made a breach upon Uzzah, and he called the name of that place Perez Uzzah unto this day. So Perez, Pharez, it all means the same thing, breach. So he named the place after the incident. Now in verse 9, and David was afraid of Yahweh that day and said, how should the ark of Yahweh come to me? Right? So, you know, this obviously, affected David some kind of way, right? A man dying for touching the ark. So now David's kind of sitting back and kind of contemplating, okay, how am I going to get this here? Because clearly the Most High, you know, we made an error. Maybe I might want to leave it here. Maybe I'm doing too much, right? Maybe we need to regroup. And maybe I need to make sure I come correct when it comes to bringing the Most High's ark back to Jerusalem, right? just like any child being reprimanded by their parents when they're trying to do something they think is going to please them. You know, the child might have second thoughts like, oh, maybe I should have did it this way. Maybe I should have tried it that way. Or maybe there's something else I need to be focused on that daddy and mommy want, you know? So that's like us with the Most High as his children. Reading 1 in verse 10, it says, so David would not remove the ark of Yahweh unto him into the city of David. David carried it aside into the house of Obed-Edom, the Gittite. So he decided to take the ark to this Obed-Edom, the Gittite, right, to abide there. Because, you know, just imagine, you know, you're bringing the ark back to Jerusalem, right, in your mind doing a good thing, right? Everyone's rejoicing and dancing, and then you have this incident where a brother touched the ark and it wasn't supposed to, and, you know, we know the Most High has mercy, even had mercy back then. But we know at the same time, whether it was Old Testament or New Testament, depending on what you do or say, the Most High can take you out right there on the spot, like he did with Uzzah in this case. Whether it be us, Israel, or the heathen, of course. We know he'll forbear to punish the heathen in most cases, but he can even take heathen out if he wants. Like we read, was it last week in Maccabees, right, about how the Most High took out Antiochus, right, and made him, you know, just rot right there on the spot, you know, and how it just began to develop over however much time passed by. And then we compared it with what happened in Acts, where the Most High, due to his pride, smote even Herod, right? The Most High can visit you right then and there if he wants. And when he does, you know, it's one of those things that kind of put you on notice, like, whoa, the Most High came to judge right on the spot just like that. Let's tread carefully, right? I don't want to get on the Most High's bad side, right? You know, maybe my effort to do something good might, you know, might lead to more evil than what I intended. Or might lead to evil, which is not what I intend, I should say. But then it says in verse 11, and the ark of Yahweh continued in the house of Obed-Edom, the Gittite, 3 months. And Yahweh blessed Obed-Edom and all his household, right? So this man Obed-Edom had the Ark of the Covenant in his house. And it says that even while it was there, it blessed everything he was doing, right? So it's like the Ark of the Covenant has like a residual blessing that comes from it, right? It also has cursing too, like we saw when the Philistines took it back early in 1 Samuel, right? Where they got emerods and they kept going into their temple, their false god. Every time they went in there, it says that their fish god, Dagon, his face was face down. They said, why does he keep falling down? So the Ark of the Covenant, you know, is quite a device, right? It's something the Most High has put special attention on, right? But we see here, just by residing in this man's house, that everything he did was blessed, right? Just by it being there. So it just shows you the importance of the Ark of the Testimony. And, you know, blessed be the Most High that we don't know where it's at now. Because, you know, if we did, you know, the heathen were trying to get their hands on it and, you know, probably put it in some special place. Might not even have it on display. It might put in some secret area, you know, hidden away from everybody else, and then try to use it for different wicked purposes. You know, yeah, it's a good thing the Most High didn't allow it to fall into their hands, because it really jacked them up. But I'm thinking about what was it, Indiana Jones, right? Where they allegedly found it, and you saw what happened when they tried to open it up. Even in that movie, they tried to, you know, touch on what you see from the scriptures, where people who handle the Ark of the Covenant who aren't supposed to, they get jacked up. They show the Germans, you know, melting, and, you know, their faces, you know, falling apart. And what did he tell the lady? He said, "Don't look. Whatever you do, don't open your eyes." Right? They kept their eyes closed the whole time, as if, you know, that would be enough to protect them, right? Yeah. But anyway, that's Hollywood. But you know, art imitates life once again. But directed by a so-called Jew, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So verse 12, back in 2 Samuel 6. And it was told to King David, saying, the Lord Yahweh hath blessed the house of Obed-Edom and all that pertaineth unto him because of the ark of God, or power. So David went and brought the ark of God from the house of Obed-Edom into the city of David with gladness. So he gave it a whole season. He said 3 months. Okay, look, we want to do this now. Let's just set it aside. I want to go on the Most High's bad side. I want to bring his wrath upon me and the rest of us. Let's just let's just leave it be.
I don't know what the spike was, but that was enough to scare David.
Yeah.
And was Obed-Edom of the house of Levi? He must have been, right?
It says a Gittite. When you read it in Chronicles, right? I believe it says the same thing. It says he's a Gittite. It says in 1 Chronicles 13:13, so David brought not the ark home to himself to the city of David, but carried it aside into the house of Obed-Edom the Gittite. And the ark of God remained with the family of Obed-Edom in his house 3 months, and Yahweh blessed the house of Obed-Edom and all that he had. So I don't think it says, but it may say it somewhere else.
It would have to have been in their family if he put the ark inside his house. Not unless his house is that big where he wouldn't have to touch the ark.
Well, we can definitely assume that from the scriptures that even though it was there, he probably instructed his family, his wife, his kids, if you do,
don't go in that room there.
Right. Just leave it be. Because if I'm not mistaken, the Gittites are strangers.
Why would he put it in the stranger?
Well, it was just a place that was nearby on the way to where Perez Uzzah, where it happened. So I'm thinking he didn't want to take it that much further, right? Than where the incident that happened, where Uzzah was smitten. You read about Gittites; they're heathens, they're Canaanites. But doesn't really. I mean, in the end, it doesn't matter as far as I think the major point is that the importance of the Ark of the Covenant and how it could bring good to anyone, right? Even though it was for us to handle, and more specifically, as we read, the sons of Kohath to handle. But reading on in verse back in 2 Samuel 6, reading on in verse 13, it says, "And it was so that when they that bear the ark of Yahweh had gone 6 paces, he sacrificed oxen and fatlings," right? So they had to do a little test case real quick, right? It's okay, guys, bear it up. All right. Now go 6 paces, So they took 6 paces. After they did that, and then nothing happened, Most High didn't come down and smite them again, and for one reason or another, it was like, okay, we're in the clear. Let's do some offerings now to show our appreciation to the Most High. Because once again, it's like, even though we're chosen, it's like we got to tread carefully when it comes to the Most High and what he deems precious, So they were extra careful. But it says that they sacrifice oxen and fatlings. As we read on, it's going to go into them doing burnt offerings and peace offerings, right? To show their thanks and show their appreciation. Now, reading on in verse 14, it says, "And David danced before Yahweh with all his might, and David was girded with a linen ephod," right? So he danced before the Most High with all his might, right? As far as it being a joyous occasion and him being thankful and appreciative of the Most High's mercy upon him, right? Even given what happened with Uzzah just 3 months, 3 months previous, right? Then it says, "So David and all the house of Israel brought up the ark of Yahweh, shouting with the sound of the trumpet." So it's like a celebration like they did before, just about 3 months later, right? After they left it there at Obed-Edom's house, right? So a joyous occasion. Kind of makes you think of a little bit too. Like when I see the things we did in righteousness before, I'll think about how we'll do certain things, but then on the left-hand side, due to us, being taken into captivity, or even before we went into captivity, us choosing to fall after false gods. Like I'm thinking about the Southern Kingdom, how we'll get in the churches. I think we were talking about it last time we were here, right? About how, we'll be in the church, dealing with, the Pentecostal or the Episcopal, whatever church it is, and the choir will get going, and the guy, the organ player will get going, and it will be, in the aisles, dancing. But now we're doing this in righteousness here, right? Or even think about our northern tribe brothers, like with Gad, right? They would do like the dances, right? But do it like, for the rain to come down, and they'll call upon, great spirit, cause rain to come down, right? And it's like, we know what a great spirit's supposed to be, and they were doing it right at first when they first got here. But then over time, you see with northern tribes, whether it was Gad up here or Reuben in Florida, or, like Issachar and Zebulun in Central America, as you go down, that serving the Most High began to be, mixed up with other idolatry. They started worshiping animals and the host of heaven and doing different types of sacrifices that the Most High, didn't approve of. And we see, we hear about that in history, right? We go into like the Mayans and the Incans and the Aztecs and different they call Mesoamerican civilization, right? Before the conquistadors came over, hardcore, they had records of what different practices they were celebrating. And you'll see certain elements that you'll find in the scriptures, but it's mixed with other stuff. And over time, it became more wicked stuff than righteous stuff, to where, as a punishment, the Most High said, all right, I'm going to send a nation from far. As soon as the eagle flies, he's going to jack you up. And now you got, our people speaking the oppressor's language, whether it's Esau as the English, Esau as the Spanish, Esau as the Portuguese, Esau as the Dutch, Esau as the French, et cetera, et cetera. Coming to the Americas and, taking us out of power and putting us into captivity and killing us and, robbing us and raping us and everything else, that we see what happened. But yeah, we would do the dances, they would do the dances too. But like I said, but for falsehood. Now in verse 16, it says, and as the ark of Yahweh came into the city of David, Michal, Saul's daughter, looked through the window and saw King David leaping and dancing before Yahweh, and she despised him in her heart. So we don't know. The scriptures don't really say what happened between the time that he, when he was breaking bread with Abner, when he said, bring Michal to me, for she, she was my wife, and your father Saul, your king Saul took her from me. We don't know what happened from that time to when she was, wedded to another man. And then Abner said, okay, part of the deal, no problem, that's fair. And told the guy she was married to, go back, leave it big. It said he was crying all the way as Michal was being brought back to David. He's like, that's my wife now. What are you doing? Like, don't bring her back. And it says Abner's just like, and the guy just went back. It's a messed up deal, but it's something that, Saul doing initially kind of set that all in motion, since they were already wed together. But from that time, her being brought back to David, because remember that was part of their deal. To this point now, she got I guess an evil eye towards David. Why that is, we can't say. We can make some assumptions. Her whole house is pretty much, fallen down at this point, right? From her fathers to her brothers to, Abner and everyone else. But we just know this is where she's at right now in her heart. And we're going to see what happens as far as this, him coming back in Jerusalem and then their exchange they have and then what it leads to. So now in verse 17, it says, and they brought in the ark of Yahweh and set it in this place in the midst of the tabernacle that David had pitched for it. And David offered burnt offerings and peace offerings before your house. Remember, there's no temple yet, but we got the city, Jerusalem, at least at this point. So they brought it back to Jerusalem. And it says he had a place where he set it up. And it says he offered burnt offerings and peace offerings. So they had the altar burnt offering they could actually use along with the tabernacle, right? Because they had a tabernacle at this point, at least. It says, and as soon as David had made an end of offering burnt offerings and peace offerings, which you read in Leviticus chapter 1 and chapter 3, you see how those are done. He blessed the people in the name of Yahweh of hosts. So he blessed the people, right? The Most High allowed them to bring this back, and then he allowed them to be a nation and to be a sovereign nation and to have, at least rule over themselves by the Most High's power. and we know from this point they would expand. But it's like a milestone, Then bringing the Ark of the Covenant back to Jerusalem. As you read on in 2 Samuel, we'll see, David going about to build up the nation more and more, right, to establish ourselves. It says in verse 19, and he dealt among all the people, even among the whole multitude of Israel, as well to the women as men, to everyone a cake of bread and a good piece of flesh and a flagon of wine. So all the people departed, everyone to his house, right? So those were there to celebrate, and he had like a gifts for everybody, right? Everyone got the same gift, as far as this, like it says, a cake, a nice piece of flesh or meat to cook, and it says in a flagon of wine, right? So it's like a parting gift. You go to like a big celebration, and as you leave by the door, they'll have like a little basket or thing sitting there and goes, oh, before you leave, everyone make sure you take one of these, before you go. So you had like that going on, right? So it was definitely a great day, right? Everyone probably went home, and as they went home, they're all like laughing and smiling, going, oh man, that was so much fun. You see David dancing? Yeah, man, you were cutting the move too. I saw you over there, you were dancing too, so it was like a nice celebration that, everyone went home was probably, in good spirits, got a good night's sleep, after they brought the ark back. So now reading on in verse 20, it says, then David returned to bless his household. So now he blessed the nation, he's going to bless his household, the house of David in particular. It says, and Michal, the daughter of Saul, came out to meet David and said, how glorious was the king of Israel today, who uncovered himself today in the eyes of the handmaids of his servants, as one of the vain fellows shamelessly uncovered himself. So after a wonderful celebration, like we said, she despised him in his heart. So she's the Debbie Downer of the event, right? She's coming to say these harsh words towards David, right? About, oh, yeah, like him dancing around. She made that to be a bad thing and said, yeah, look at you dancing around like one of the vain fellows do, right? Exposing yourself, right? So he might have had like a garment on, maybe it was loose. So she probably was saying, he was exposing himself as he danced, as the garment moved around and stuff, right? But now let's see what David says in response. Because remember we read earlier about, unto the merciful, the Most High will show himself merciful, right? And to the upright, the Most High will show himself upright. But then to the froward, the Most High will show himself froward. So the Most High, whether it's us or the nations, he'll always shine that mirror up to us, right? In case we forget. So let's see David's response. It says in verse 21, and David said unto Michal, it was before Yahweh which chose me before thy father, and before all his house, to appoint me ruler over the people of Yahweh, over Israel. Therefore I will play before Yahweh. Right? So he's saying, look, I'm going to acknowledge the Most High's decision to choose me to be ruler over Israel. Right? You notice he doesn't even go into that much detail about it, because he could have probably went into even more detail. We already have the record, right? As far as the mercy that he showed towards Saul, right? Throughout their squabbles, right? Where David could have easily taken his life into his own hands, but didn't do it. Didn't do so. So David is letting bygones be bygones at this point. And he's accepted that the Most High has chosen him. That's why he says, therefore will I play before Yahweh, right? 22. And I will yet be more vile than thus, and will be base in mine own sight. And of the maidservants which thou hast spoken of them shall I be had in honor, right? So in other words, it's like, he pretty much did like the equivalent of this kind of, when I read this, made me think of this, you might remember some, Redman had this song, your name must be, so you see what you say? I think it's like, your name must be something, because everywhere I go, people say, look, that's so-and-so. And he says, I'll be there. I'm sorry, I don't know the lyrics offhand, but I just remember like the whole like premise behind that song. It was like, you want to talk trash, then, I'll be whatever it is that you say I am, So David's kind of giving her like this similar treatment. Like, you want to say that? All right, well, I'll be that then. Right. And for the people, for the handmaids, you said that I shamed myself before, may I be had in their honor, right? So then it says in verse 23, therefore Michal, the daughter of Saul, had no child unto the day of her death. So, this is really just this story just really makes you really consider, wow, how when the Most High has his favor upon somebody, you know, if anything, you want to not be against them, you want to be for them, right? It makes you think about Gamaliel's wisdom when he was talking about when they caught the disciples in the time of Acts, where he said, if in the case of David, it's talking about him, but in the case of the disciples at that time, you want to be careful if you go against the Most High's anointed. You want to be careful you go against who the Most High has shown favor towards, right? Lest the Most High judgment be turned in upon you, right, and turned back on you, right? And we see he did that in this situation with her, where he said that she had no child until the day of her death, to where Most High had the circumstances work out to where her house didn't continue. So it's like if the house of Saul was already cut off, now you of the house of Saul, Michal, now you're not even going to have children at this point, because you came at David this way, right? So yeah, when it comes to the Most High and who he's dealing with, we want to ask the question right. We don't want to ask it, why is the Most High blessing so-and-so? You want to say, I wonder why the Most High is blessing so-and-so. Why the Most High said it did this in a situation. You want to say, I wonder why the Most High said it did this in a situation. Not questioning the Most High, not questioning his judgment, no matter how much it may hurt you from your own vantage point, right? So the way you look at it may seem like it doesn't make sense. But hope that you can understand why the Most High may say or do something in a situation, and be humble about it, so that you don't have the Most High's wrath turned upon you when you speak ill or do ill towards those who the Most High is dealing with. As in the case of David here with, it's the case of David during this time. Let me get that story real quick in Acts, just to kind of makes you think of this. This is Acts chapter 5. Acts chapter 5. I'll read through the story swiftly, and then we'll close out. Just a link with this this final exchange between David and Michal. Like I said, there's a lot of things that are unwritten, but we may consider what it might have been. It's like at one point, she's married to David. David's Saul's top man, his favorite man, and then things break out between the two of them. He's seeking to David's life. Remember, she even helped him escape, right? He sought his life, right, and cover for him, right, just like Jonathan did. But at least to the end, Jonathan didn't have an evil eye towards him. But at her witnessing, her family, fall out, and then those that remain fall out, and now everything being handed over to David. Maybe it was she was jealous, perhaps. Maybe jealous of that this was supposed to be the glory that her house was supposed to get, now going to his house. But like I said, it's all just speculation. It doesn't really say why. It just says that she despised him in her heart. But I think we can relate to that to a certain extent, especially if you might have a time where you might be down and out, but then you come out of your lower state and come to a high place. You have a certain level of success and whatever it is that you're doing. And then friends that were with you before in the beginning when you were low, now that you've come into power, they may have even had a hand in helping you come into a place of prominence. And not to say it's gotten to your head, but they may see you have a certain level of success, and then they now feel some kind of way about it, right? They may want what you have, or feel jealous, or want the same type of uplifting, but they're still jealous, and they may not even be able to say much because, they could have partook in it too, but they didn't do what you did, or put in the same effort in that you did. Or even worse, they put in the same effort, but then the Most High just didn't bless your hand the way that they didn't bless the person's hands the way they may have blessed their friend's hand, that the Most High had them have more success. So this can happen. I know we might have experienced this one way or another, even in the truth, where we may have been the one that had evil eye towards someone else, or someone may have had an evil eye toward us when they see our success. They see you kind of rise up to a certain extent when it comes to your career or your position or whatever it might be, and it might feel like left out instead of being happy for your success. But this is Acts chapter 5 and verse 33. It says, and when they heard that, they were cut to the heart and took counsel to slay them. Right? This is after Peter diced them up when they were coming against Christ, saying, this guy that you crucified, this guy that you crucified and that you rejected, he's the one whom we preach. So they didn't like the fact they were carrying on the name of Christ, right? They wanted him out the picture for a reason, and in the memory of him. It says in 34, then stood there up one in the council, a Pharisee named Gamaliel, a doctor of the law and had reputation among all the people, and commanded to put the apostles forth a little space. So you read about Gamaliel, he was, like I said, a Pharisee of renown, right? A popular man, to where when he spoke on something or did something, people took note, right? He was a man of reputation, right? And you read further on in Acts, you find out that he was actually Paul's teacher, right? He taught Paul directly, right? As far as the law, statutes, commandments, right? When it came to the Pharisees. He says, and said unto them, ye men of Israel, take heed to yourselves what ye intend to do as touching these men, talking about the apostles. 36. For before these days rose up Theudas, boasting himself to be somebody, to whom a number of men, about 400, joined themselves, who was slain, and all as many as obeyed him were scattered and brought to naught. After this man rose up Judas of Galilee in the days of the taxing. Remember, Judas is a popular name, not the same as Judas Iscariot, right? Just like Simon was a popular name, right? It says, Judas of Galilee in the days of the taxing, and drew away much people after him. He also perished, and all, even as many as obeyed him, were dispersed. And now I say unto you, refrain from these men, and let them alone. For if this counsel or this work be of men, it will come to naught. That's why I gave those two examples. But if it be of God, ye cannot overthrow it, lest haply ye be found even to fight against God. Right? So this counsel is timeless. Right? But like I said, it made me think of just this scenario we're reading here in Samuel's, where we see that the Most High is dealing with David, right? Everything he's saying and doing, right? To where you want to be at odds with him, right? Especially if there's no cause, as we saw even with Michal's father Saul, right? And all those that were with him, and the fate that they met, because the Most High was dealing with David. And even Saul knew it, but couldn't or wouldn't repent from his evil that he sought to do against David, even though he saw the Lord was with him. Finally, in verse 40, and to him they agreed. And when they had called the apostles and beaten them, so even after that, it was like, oh, okay, Gamaliel said that. All right. So they didn't probably do as worse as they wanted to, but they still beat them. So it just shows like that hard heart they had in them, right? Even though Gamaliel was making a wise point that they should take heed to, they still put hands on the Pharisees. Still put hands on the apostles. It says they commanded that they should not speak in the name of Jesus or Yahushua, and let them go. And as you read on, it says, and they departed from the presence of the council, rejoicing that they were kind of worthy to suffer shame for his name. So if anything, it wasn't a deterrent, it was a motivator, right? And they said, wow, first doing the right thing, they had us get beat by these Pharisees, right? Without a cause. Wow, what Christ said was true. Right now we're partakers of his sufferings. Let's keep the movement going, right? So it had the opposite effect. All praises. 42, it says, and daily in the temple and every house, they ceased not to preach and teach Yahushua Mashiach. But I just wanted to read that little excerpt there. But I think that's it for 2 Samuel's 5 and 6. Anyone have any questions or comments, other verses they want to bring out, or any comments they want to make on the reading today? Take that as a no. So that's concludes 2 Samuel's 5 and 6. So we're going to be in the New Testament next week when we read Colossians 1 and 2. It's not going to read Colossians 3 and 4 for next week's reading. And remember, as was stated last night in the class, it's going to be a new moon and a Sabbath. So not only is going to be Colossians 3 and 4 for the Sabbath, at Friday night, sundown, next week, which is going to be the 20th, is going to be the 11th new moon. So it's going to be a Sabbath, but it's going to be a Sabbath we can cook on, since it's a feast also. So just be mindful of that as far as next things that come up.
This is the new moon is Saturday then, right?
Friday,
It
Sunday.
starts Friday night, but we're not going to celebrate the Saturday, right?
No, Friday, Sunday, and Saturday, Sunday. So we're going to celebrate.
We're going to start at Friday night. We're going to celebrate.
And then
New moon service. Okay.
Friday night.
Well, we always do.
I think he's making
It
sure.
depends on when the new moon comes in. The new moon comes on Friday night.
You were making sure it wasn't Saturday night as opposed to Friday night.
Yeah.
Okay. So yes, it's Friday night. So it's going to be Friday, Sunday, and Saturday, Sunday, in case there's any confusion. Maybe someone else had that question too, watching, and we just don't know. All right. Yeah, Colossians 3 and 4. Oh, and let me read this too. Since we got the 3-day weekend for our brother Martin Luther King coming up, right? So always remember this verse here too, because one thing I always like to talk about when it comes to our leaders, past and present, we can acknowledge good things they may say or do, but acknowledge they don't follow the goodness of God, right? As a whole, they're not in the truth. So no matter how much our people or the heathen want to give accolades to some of our leaders, right? We got to measure them against the scriptures, whether it be Martin, Malcolm, Medgar, right? Marcus, right? Go down the list. Those are all M names, how ironic, right? But Garvey. Go down that list. We want to always measure them against the measure of Christ and the apostles and the prophets and say, what did they say or do that was according to this? That I'll acknowledge. But the rest that they did, this is why we can't look to them, right? But we can look to our forefathers and foremothers for leadership and for counsel, for motivation, for inspiration, and none other than Christ, him being the best example. We can get motivation from others, right? Like we're reading about now, David, or like Moses. And for the sisters, you have great women like Esther or like Judith, right? Beautiful both outside and inside, right? These are our inspiration. Not these are the world that Esau will tell us, look to them. And then we even see over the short period of time that they've been, not with us, just a couple decades. We see the wicked try to change their narrative, right? They won't talk about, the last speech that MLK gave, where he was talking about, reparations, which they want to turn a blind eye to. He was talking about not only boycotting, public sector, but boycotting the private sector. We got to go beyond bus boycotts. We got to hit them where it hurts, hit them in their pockets. Don't shop at Woolworth and Wonder Bread and other companies that are around at that time, right? They won't talk about those final speeches before he was assassinated, right? But they'll try to recast him in this image of, oh, I have a dream that little black boys and black girls will hold hands with white boys and white girls. Like they're selecting what they like to focus on. Yeah. And, I say this jokingly, but, we hope Christ to come back soon. But say we're here another 20, 30 years. If they had their will, I wouldn't be surprised if MLK starts looking like Caesar Borgia. Right. They start changing his face. Right by the time our kids have kids, right? You bring up MLK, they'll think he's a so-called white man, right? They'll take anybody that we have and just change him around. It's like, see, Christ was around, 2,000 years ago, and they still argue about him. Because he was around so long ago, we don't have, video camera, or even like the cameras he had in the 1800s to have like a record. Look, here's what the guy actually looked like. Now they argue over what he looked like and what his people look like. But give it enough time. Anybody, even in this time, right? In this last era, if they could, they would change how they look too. And shout out to a Kanyao Kanan, where he showed that ad in that booklet that he had, where it was like a watermark, and it had like information about the wrench was invented by Jack Johnson, the boxer. But the watermark behind the little ad had a watermark of a so-called white boxer. It's not saying that was him, but just you looking at that, you would just say, "Oh, Jack Johnson." You see the watermark, so in your conscious, you think, "Oh, it's a so-called white man that invented the wrench." You know what I mean? Unless you actually go and look up Jack Johnson, and they could probably, they could probably clean up Google if they wanted to. You had to go to the actual library, pull up microfiche, old school, to see, oh, this is what he actually looked like. Because if Google can change their algorithm to say, let's have these pictures come up first. Most folks, when they look up stuff online, they don't go past the first page. So if you go on the first page and all you see, hypothetically, all you see is Jack Johnson looking like a so-called white man, most folks going to think, oh, this must be what he looked like, and run with that. But at least we still, he was around somewhat recently, so there's still footage of him, there's pictures of him. We can see that he was a, brother. Like I said, I wouldn't put him past them trying to make MLK a so-called white guy. I think there was even an article too about some Broadway play they did about Selma or something like that, and they had a so-called white man actually casted as MLK's character in the play. And it caused a lot of controversy. People were saying, of all the people you could have casted to play MLK, you had a so-called white man play him. You can Google that, but that's what I said, man. Just give him an inch, It'll cover his face too. And he wasn't even teaching the truth. But any good that he stood for, they'll try to change it up, just like they did our Lord and Savior. But it's the verse I wanted to read just to show. This is Jeremiah 23. Jeremiah 23, and where should I start? Here we go. Jeremiah 23, I'll read from 25. Jeremiah 23 and 25, it says, I have heard what the prophets said that prophesy lies in my name, saying, I have dreamed, I have dreamed. So now we know MLK isn't the only one. This was going on way before even MLK, right? But we can use this to show now how you have figures like him, right? That our people in the heathen will uphold. But then when they talk about they had a dream or a vision, right, to inspire people, we listen to whatever that vision or dream is, it goes against the scriptures, right? That's what Jeremiah is warning us about during his time and the time that we're in right now. This is a timeless advice here. I have heard what the prophets said that prophesy lies in my name, as far as him speaking on the Most High's behalf, saying, I dreamed, verse 26. How long should this be in the heart of the prophets that prophesy lies? Yeah, they are prophets of the deceit of their own heart. See, these dreams are what? Things of men, right? MLK and his vision was of man. Even others that you may like. I mentioned some of those other M's, right? And, we got others, that we can go down the list. Then and now that folks may look up to. But is their dream according to the commandments of God? If not, you better hold them at arm's length, because you'll see our people that are in the world, they'll rally after them, in ignorance, because, they might be charismatic, or they might be a good orator, right? Or they may have a certain following. So you go and try to, latch on to them, right? This is in 27. Which think to cause my people to forget my name by their dreams, which they tell every man his neighbor, as their fathers have forgotten my name for Baal, right? It was a very popular idol that the Hamites would celebrate, right? It says, the prophet that hath a dream, let him tell a dream, and he that hath my word, let him speak my word faithfully. What is the shaft to the wheat, saith the Lord, right? Because the shaft bears the wheat. It says in verse 29, is not my word like as a fire, saith Yahweh, and like a hammer that breaketh the rock in pieces? 30, therefore, behold, I am against the prophets, saith Yahweh, and steal my words, everyone from his neighbor. 31, behold, I am against the prophets, saith Yahweh, that use their tongues and say, he saith, right? So claiming God said, really, it's of man, right? We see this now to this day, right? Different denominations, right? Well, they'll say God said, or the Lord said, but then they'll twist God's words. And finally, in 32, I'll stop here. Behold, I am against them that prophesy false dreams, saith Yahweh, and do tell them that cause my people to err by their lies and by their lightness. Yet I sent them not, nor commanded them. Therefore, they shall not profit this people at all, saith Yahweh. Right? So just meditate on this and share this with folks that you may talk to, family, friends, associates, right? Strangers even, that mention or bring up, Martin Luther King and Martin Luther King Day and what he stood for and everything else. And even, deal with this first and foremost, but then also even show them, well, what about the final speeches of MLK? What he was talking about towards the end of his life, and how they try to, brush that aside, and why are they brushing that aside? Yeah, so just be mindful, since we're coming up on that Monday. So yes, Jeremiah 23. I read from 25 down to 32. Okay, so if no further questions or comments, I'll say a Shar Shabbat once again. I'll say continue to watch and pray as we close to that day, that Lord and Savior makes a second coming. And all thanks to the Most High in Christ by way of the Holy Spirit, or Barakatei Yahweh by Hashem Yahweh Shai LaHaruch HaKodash, for making this possible. Thank you for bearing with us in our late start once again today. And with that, we'll do the closing prayers. Thanks. To cure a weakling child. Barakatei Yahweh by Hashem Yahweh Shai, Asharath, Nanawa, Pari, Agapan, Tuara, Aman. La Yahweh by Hashem Yahweh Shai, Yasha'al. English translation. Blessed are you, Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai, that gives to us the fruit of the vine. Thank you, so be it. To Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai, with Israel. Amadwa, Panuay Jerusalem, stand face Jerusalem. Yahweh, Ba'Hashem, Yahweh Shai, Babakushai, Shemai, Lanawa, Aitha, Yemyan, Aitha, Shalak, Ma'aka Allah, Waha Allahayim, Tazwadakin, La, Shemar Al, Barak, Rapah, Magan, Wakazayak, Banya, Yasha Allah, Washalak, Lanawa, Rabian, Kakama, Rabian, Da'aik, Rabian, Bayana, Rabian, Sabalanwa, Rabian, Amawan, Rabiim, Aqua, Rabiim, Ahabiim, Rabiim, Haganah, Rochanaya, Wasalak, Kal, Katayanawa, La Akin, Wa Akiwa, Wayasha'ala, Tamyad, Waiwalam, Ba'asham, Yahawashai, Tawada, Aman. English translation. Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai, please listen to us now. Right now, send Michael and the righteous powers to watch over, bless, heal, protect, and make strong the children of Israel. And send to us much wisdom, much knowledge, much understanding, much patience, much faith, much brotherhood, much love, much spiritual protection, and forgive all our sins. For the brothers, sisters in Israel, always and forever. In the name of Yahweh Shai, thank you, so be it. The Four Corners Prayer. Yahweh, Ba'asham, Yahweh Shai, Barak Nawa, Wayasha'ala, Wabat Yasaparim, Shema Yasharele, Yahweh, Allah Yahweh, Yahweh, okay. English translation. Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai, bless us in Israel in the house of books. And then we said, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord. So with that, we'll say Manakah Tawab. Since we're not in sundown yet, but getting close. Manakah Tawab, good afternoon. Wa Ashar Shabbat, Yasharala. Moses will talk to you this upcoming week.